Hello and welcome to Legal Bites. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legal Bites merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. Let's get into it indeed. Oh my gosh, you guys, let's hang on one second. This is just the cutest. Hang on. Look at that. Look at that. We've got a smiling indie bear. Hey, puppers. Hi. How are you? That is like the cutest, and that is exactly the reason why we have the indie cam. She is very happy to be here on day 2 of the Stand Your Ground hearing of the so-called Black Swan Murder Trial. Holmes is with us as well. He's just off camera right now with his little bow tie, but he'll show up sure enough, soon enough. He'll step into frame because he can't help it because he knows I have treats. Anyway, so yes, we are in day 2 of this hearing. And when we first went into it, it definitely seemed like, based on the reporting, based on what people were saying, on Long Crime and Court TV, folks were like, yeah, this is like a slam dunk case for the state. There's no way that she's going to win this because she shot him 4 times in the back. There's no way that this is self-defense if she shot him 4 times in the back. It's just not possible, right? Like, well, not possible, but like, how can you find for self-defense if you shot someone in the back? They're not even facing you. But yesterday we heard from the medical examiner that is not true. In fact, there was like maybe 2 shots in the leg that were from behind, but very explainable if you account for him falling backwards after being shot in like the right side of his chest from front to back. So, it could be that he turned in a defensive kind of move to be shot in the side as opposed to the front. Or it could be that she was off to his right, or his left. I guess if it was his right, if he was shot in the side. We can do this. We can do directions. So anyway, so far things are not exactly as they were portrayed by the media. Dun dun dun. Oh my gosh, color me Pikachu face shocked. It happens. It happens way more often than we want to think. So anyway, so we've got day 2 here, and I'm so excited to see all of you with us right now. And let's get started, shall we? We've got the Long Crime feed up now, and we're about like 15-16 minutes behind, 20 minutes behind, I guess, at this point, which is fine. We will get caught up because inevitably there's going to be some kind of a recess, and we'll get caught up. So let's do this, shall we? Okay. And so I hope you guys are all having a great Friday. Normally by the way, normally at 10 a.m. we are doing a casual members only live stream for about an hour, sometimes 2, but usually at about an hour. But we're not doing that today because of this hearing. But I will try. I'll try to see if I can sneak one in somewhere, and I'll let you guys know. Those of you who are members, I'll try to find some time for a quick members only live stream at some point. But if not, I am so sorry. I apologize in advance. Trying to get everything in together here with all the content and all the legal stuff to talk about this week, and last week and next week. So okay, with that, let's get started. Okay, well, we can skip through the part where there's no audio. Okay, so maybe we're not that far behind anyway. I'm glad that we got started a little late. Although, hang on a sec. Let me read.
Failed.
Okay, so here's audio. Let's
miserably
see.
to.
Okay, come on. Come on now. All right. Are we internet? Are you going to work? Okay, so yeah, this was quiet, silent. Okay. Okay, so maybe this. There we go. Okay, so this may have just been an issue with the long crime feed. Could be.
Having to share custody of this child with him.
So some kind of an evidentiary argument here,
if you will, and the defendant knew that. When this shooting
Mary,
took
this
place,
is a hearing. Yes, it's not the trial yet. We are deciding whether or not we're going to make it to the trial
my husband
at the end of the hearing.
Is what's in the motion, which is not substantive evidence. There are pictures that there may be a scratch on the side. There may be a little scratch on the abdomen, and you can see from the pictures taken the day of, 3 days later, and also the booking photo, which is about 5-6 weeks later, that she has no swelling, no bruising. There is nothing wrong with her body except for those scratches on her abdomen. There is nothing about those injuries to signify a need or it being reasonable or necessary to pull out a gun and shoot someone. And the physical evidence, while it does not give us definitive evidence of what exactly happened, it does give us some information. And I'll just remind the court, the shot was not straight on. The kill shot, the shot to the abdomen or the chest, was not straight on. This shot came from the right side and ended up on the left side. Now, did it have a little bit of a front to back? Yes. But Dr. Vega testified that it was basically from side to side.
This is the state currently, this prosecution arguing.
Any implication that this defendant was coming at her at the time of the shot is disproved by the fact that he's turned sideways, at least when that shot happened. Then you have the shot to the leg, which is it is the right leg from the back calf out the knee, or right below the knee, on the outer side of the leg, at an angle that he would either have to be falling backwards, and the way Dr. Vega explained it, he would have to fall backwards, and basically his feet would have to be at the level of his face for that shot, if someone were standing, for that shot to have gotten that trajectory, that path. He would have had to have fallen.
Danielle, as the hearing is 2 days. We're on day 2 now.
And that is just not reasonable that someone would fall that way. What is more reasonable is that he had turned and was beginning to run, and the calf was up this way when the shot was fired. So there is no evidence of what danger there was. There is no evidence that there was any necessity to use deadly force. We have no substantive evidence of any of that. All we have is that at one time she said that he was attacking her. Even if you take that as substantive evidence, what does attack mean? Does attack mean push? Does that warrant a shot? Does attack mean, elbow? Does that warrant a shot with a .45? No. The court has none of that information that would justify use of deadly force. So the court must rely on what the state has presented. And the state has presented a vast motive to get this man out of her life so she can have this child to herself. She's manipulative. She is telling him one thing, telling everyone else something else, and telling people that she's afraid of this man, but yet texting with him, inviting him to Selby Gardens. Why would she invite him somewhere? She's so afraid that he's going to do something. She's also on a video within days of the murder where she is trying to tell people that she's so afraid of him and what he would do to Emerson and these types of things. And she's on the video while they're playing a game in a restaurant and she's laughing. And does she seem scared? No. Because I know the court can take into consideration the defendant's past experience with this victim and why she may be scared and why that fear may be justified. The only evidence you have before you is that there isn't any. And this defendant knew that she, 3 days after the shooting, had to be in front of the same judge that was not favorable to her. And this report was going to come out and it was going to blow her story out of the water. And it was going to say that she was not planning to reconcile with Doug. And quite frankly, the fear of what the judge would do at that point was enough. So twofold is that she had a definite motive. Second is there is absolutely no evidence of reasonableness or justification or any reason that this shooting would have been truly self-defense. So on that grounds, I would ask you to deny the motion.
All right, Mr. Taylor, before I get started, one thing I didn't do whenever you rested was just to clarify, Ms. Benefield, I do need to have a little bit of a conversation with you. So if you'd raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm
she
to
is
tell
going
the
to
truth, the
testify.
whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do so.
All right, ma'am, you can remain seated. Do you understand that in this hearing, you have the right to testify, you have the right not to testify, you do have the right to remain silent? Do you understand? You understand you've chosen not to testify? And is that your decision and your decision alone after speaking with your attorneys and consulting with them? And you also have the right to present evidence. You don't have to, but you could present documents, videos, the testimony of other witnesses. You have that right. Do you understand? You understand that you and your attorneys have decided not to put on any evidence?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you're okay with all of that? All right. Thank you, ma'am. Just want to make sure. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So she is not okay. So that argument just now by the state was what they're doing is they are arguing. So this whole hearing is about a motion, right? The motion to request dismissal of this whole case on the basis of this immunity that she supposedly has for stand your ground immunity. That's what she's arguing that she has. So the arguments right here, it's about the halfway point. It's kind of similar to at trial, you know, how halfway through when the prosecution or the plaintiff side, they rest their case, the defense might make an argument saying, Your Honor, this should be dismissed because blah, blah, blah. There's not a single chincilla of evidence that supports the plaintiff's case. And by chincilla, of course, I mean scintilla, but I just can't help myself. But, so there's this whole exchange about what should happen? Should we move forward or should we dismiss it? That's what's going on here right now as well, is this argument back and forth to say look, we don't need to put on more we don't need to put on more witnesses for this hearing because the state really hasn't met their burden to show that she's not entitled to this immunity, with clear and convincing evidence, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks like now the defense is going to make his case. But yeah, we'll see. Or has the judge already decided and now he's going to call a witness? I'm not exactly sure because we had no audio for the first bit.
Your Honor, good morning. So I'd like to start, if I could, with the statute's elements.
Okay, so he's gonna argue now. This is no direct of any witness right now.
Your Honor, I'm referring to 776-012, use or threatened use of force in defense of person, subsection 2. It's got basically 3 elements, Judge White. The individual claiming the stand your ground, needs to be in a place where they have a right to be. This was Miss Benefield's home. The second element is that the individual claiming the stand your ground defense needs to have not been involved in criminal wrongdoing. Miss Benefield was not. And the third element, Your Honor, is that the individual seeking immunity under the statute needs to have felt that under the circumstances as they perceived them at that time, that the use of deadly force was justified for fear of great bodily harm or death.
Cherry C. Mills, thank you so much for your member chat.
We have
Ooh, glad to be
filed
catching
a
live. Glad to have you here.
motion and made averments therein. Specifically, Your Honor, as to the facts that Miss Benefield knew about Douglas Benefield at the day and time of this shooting. They are, beginning on the first page of our motion, that he fired a handgun into the ceiling.
Any objections if I put him on 1.25x speed? Because I feel like it might help us all pay attention a little bit better. Me, when I say us all, I'm really talking about myself. Let me know if there's any objections in the chat, because otherwise, okay. Yeah, okay. No objections. Please do. I love the fact that for note-taking purposes, having someone speak slowly can be very, very helpful. But if you're not taking notes, or even if, I don't know, I kind of am taking notes, but sometimes it still is, he's a meanderer a little bit. So, okay.
To intimidate her from speaking any
So
further.
this is 1.25x.
That he threw a loaded gun at her. That he punched their dog in the face hard enough to render the dog unconscious. That he regularly carried a loaded concealed firearm. That he unlawfully placed a tracker on her car. And Miss Benefield frequently observed him tailing her car. That he was caught by a neighbor at night standing in her backyard and peering into Miss Benefield's home.
Okay, and also I'm seeing in the chat about volume that the courtroom volume is low in comparison to me. I'm just going to turn myself down. So turn the overall volume up. I'll turn myself down, and hopefully that'll match it. Let me know if I've found the balance.
That he punched numerous holes in the walls of their home, and that his previous marriage had a history of domestic violence. Now, again, this is what Miss Benefield knew and believed on that day. And this has never been addressed in this hearing. It's been ignored. Now, I understand why it's been ignored. Miss O'Donnell's competitive. She's a good lawyer. She's presented what she could. She doesn't have any evidence to rebut this. But, again, as far as Miss Benefield's belief and understanding on that day, we attached to our exhibits Mr. Benefield's own admissions about not only firing the gun in the house, but I think it's, again, because it runs to what Miss Benefield believed and knew at that time, this is the individual she was married to. In his deposition under oath, which we attached to exhibit number 1, Your Honor, which was taken on July 17, 2018. He said,
Jack, did this come out in the hearing?
Well, I think that's one of the issues that we kind of discussed yesterday, whether the motion and its appendix or its appendices are substantive evidence.
again, this is what Miss Benefield knew, though. And the standard is what she knew on the day this happened. Okay? So whether it's substantive evidence, Your Honor, or procedural default, this goes to what Miss Benefield knew and believed on that day.
I understand. I think the defense position is that it's substantive evidence. The state's position it isn't. So, absolutely.
You were the one, question, you were the one reading from page 64. You were the one that threw the gun against the wall, correct? Absolutely. And I admitted to that. Question, you were the one that pulled the gun out of the sleeve and discharged it. Absolutely. And I admitted it. But you think that it was her fault? Answer, absolutely. And she should have stopped when you told her to, correct? Any one of the 100 times I asked her to. Again, on page 67. When you threw the gun, the effort was to make her shut up. No, that's not what was going on in my head. My head was pure expression of frustration. Question, do you see where it says right here in your own document that's now part of Exhibit 3, I threw it to make her shut up. Do you see you wrote that? Answer, yes. This is your writing. Answer, Question, yes. Answer, yes. Again, Your Honor, in the deposition of July 17th from page 72, question, and you admit that that happened on or about that day you hit the wall to get her to stop talking. Answer, I hit it out of frustration. It had the effect of stopping her for a minute. Page 73, question, so you hit the wall where? I was inside the closet and hit it from on the inside of the closet, just about where there's an ADT alarm. Question, it put a hole in the wall? Answer, yes, it did. And then it went through, my fist went through the sheetrock and sort of hit the outside. Your Honor, I can't imagine. I know when I'm at the range, and most people, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody at the range without earplugs. I cannot imagine the terror of having a firearm shot while I'm sitting at the kitchen table in my house into the ceiling. I don't think the intimidation that would accompany that type of intentional act, and make no mistake, it was intentional because he admitted it was, I don't think that kind of intimidation easily disperses. I think it stays with someone for quite a while. One might even suggest that that's the kind of act that creates post-traumatic stress. It has never been addressed in this hearing by the state. It's been ignored. They haven't been able to address it. And again, the quote from Jefferson, Your Honor, is very, very telling. And I might remind the court in the Jefferson case, that was on a writ of prohibition. The trial court had denied Mr. Jefferson's stand your ground motion, and the appellate court came in and stopped the trial and reversed it. And this is what they said. We are mindful that there will be situations where the accused is the only available witness to the events leading to an act that is claimed to be justifiable use of force. This may result in great difficulty for the state to overcome the accused's prima facie claim by clear and convincing evidence. But our result here is mandated by the text of 776.032, subsection 4. So, what we also know from both the Jefferson case, Judge White, and the Riggins case, again, both second DCA cases who have spoken pretty definitively on standing ground motions, is that the court must take the averments as true. And what I would suggest to Your Honor is that whether it is substantive evidence or procedural default, it brings us to the same conclusion. The state has not only failed miserably to meet their burden of clear and convincing evidence by disputing it, but they've never addressed it. They have not presented one word to show that Doug Benefield was not violent. The Casanova case had this to say about that, Your Honor.
Just give me 1 second. Yes, sir, I got it. Thank you.
Based on the Second District Court of Appeals decision in Jefferson versus State, contrary to the lower tribunal's order, we conclude that a defendant's motion to dismiss under Florida stand your ground law can establish a prima facie claim of self-defense immunity from criminal prosecution, even though the motion to dismiss is not sworn to by someone with personal knowledge or supported by evidence or testimony establishing the facts in the motion to dismiss. That's a pretty powerful and definitive statement, Your Honor. Another thing that
I'm sorry about the volume issues. For some reason, for me, it seems like it's okay. So the sound issue doesn't seem as much of a problem. So that I wonder if it's a StreamYard issue. God, I hope not. I hope it just resolves. By the way, Kit Kat, thank you so much for gifting one Legal Bites membership. Chrissy Linen, you have been gifted a membership. So welcome to Bite Club. And thank you, Kit Kat. Very kind, very generous of you.
the state has left entirely unaddressed is the fact that in this motion, we alleged that this crescendo built over the course of time on that day with subsequent anxiety attendant to Ms. Benefield based upon the actions of Mr. Benefield. Specifically, we cited and averred that at one point in time, Ms. Benefield said, "I've had enough. I want you out. You need to leave my house now." We've clearly established Mr. Benefield did not live there.
Also, Shireen, thank you so much for also gifting one Legal Bites membership. Now, Genergy, you have been gifted a membership by Shireen. So, so welcome to Bite Club, or welcome back to Bite Club. You've been in Bite Club before. And Shireen, thank you so much. Very kind, very generous. And yeah, I guess so. I guess you guys are saying it has to do with like the camera angle. Like one camera angle is fine, another one is not okay. Oh, geez, I'm sorry, guys. Maybe my earbuds are like just naturally balancing it. I don't know. That's so weird.
We then further articulated that when he would not leave after she issued and finally found the strength to confront him and tell him, "Get out," she decided to leave. What did he do? He grabbed her by the left hand, turned her around, blocked the door, and would not let her leave, which resulted in her fleeing for sanctuary towards the bedroom. The reason why that's so significant, Your Honor, is because the Cummings decision dealt with exactly that situation. And they referred to that as a remaining in burglary. I don't have to quote the statute for the court. I'm sure the court is quite familiar with Florida's burglary statute. But I can tell the court this. The facts in Cummings were very interesting. As the court may recall, it was a couple. They were not married, but they cohabitated, lived in a trailer park. They went to a tavern to have some drinks and befriended another couple, also unmarried. The party continued.
Nick Wilson, thank you for gifting a Legal
Bites
Bites membership. Thank you, thank you.
Mr.
Very kind of
Cummings,
you too. Wendy Sponsler,
where Mr. Cummings and the
welcome to Bite Club.
invitee got
You've been
into a
gifted a
drunken
membership.
brawl. The appellate court said that at the moment the invitee began to fight with Mr. Cummings, his license, his invitation, his right to be present in the home of Mr. Cummings by law was revoked. And his status was that of a burglar who, by virtue of committing a simple battery,
Dan, thank you for gifting one Legal
Mr.
Bites
Cummings,
membership.
made him
Let's see who's
a
been gifted.
forcible
Marissa M.
felon.
You've been gifted a membership.
And as the court
Welcome to
knows,
Bite Club. Thank you, guys.
under 776.031, subsection 2, Your Honor, use or threatened use of force in defense of property, this is what the statute says. A person is justified in using or threatening to use deadly force only if he or she reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. Under Florida's burglary statute, which I've cited for the court in our stand your ground motion,
Marissa M. Thank you for also
burglary is a
gifting one Legal
forcible
Bites
felony.
membership. And Mountain Princess
A
207.
person
Thank
who
you,
uses or
guys.
threatens to use deadly force in accordance
Charm
with this
and
section
BL
does not
Blazy,
have a duty to
you are now
retreat
members of Bite
and
Club.
has
You've
the
been
right
gifted
to
memberships.
stand her
Welcome.
ground if the person using or threatening to use the deadly force is not engaged in criminal activity, as in a place where she has.
Very kind of you guys. Thank you.
Once again, Mrs. Benefield's home, simply packing, not engaged in any activity in any stretch of the imagination that could be considered improper. And given what she knew on that day about Douglas Benefield, boy, did she have every reason. to
Joshua
feel
Ten
bad,
Hag, thank you for
especially
gifting
after
a Legal Bites
refused to let
membership
her
as well.
visit
Tanya,
her
you're
home.
now a member of Bite
According
Club.
to Cummings, he lost the
Thank
right
you
to be
guys.
present at that moment
So fun.
and was
Very kind
a
of you guys.
trespassing burglar. And they don't want to discuss the remaining in statute. So,
Blue Avaro, thank you
what
for
have we
joining.
seen in the
Thank you for
state's
joining Bite
visitation
Club, for
complaint?
becoming a YouTube member.
They have
Welcome to Bite
established
Club.
motive.
Thank you so much.
They've made it very, very clear that that has been their objective. And I'm not going to chase it because, as I've told the court from the beginning, that is not an element. It is not one of the facts and issue of this statute. By the way, one other thing that Ms. Benefield knew, Your Honor, on that day about Mr. Benefield. This
Blue
would be
Avaro,
from
thank you for
our
gifting 5
exhibit
Legal Bites memberships. Thank you. Atheist Ant.
number
Let's see.
4.
Mary M.
Mr.
Calypson's
Benefield's
Vixen,
own statement,
Vicky Gomez,
"I
and
promise you
Jessica. You've
going
all been
forward,
gifted
I won't do
memberships.
anything
Welcome. Welcome to
stupid,
Bite Club.
embarrassing,
Thank you,
and
Blue Avaro.
insulting like I did with your water
Sandra
once, or
Ramirez,
back
thank you for
early
gifting
in the
another
year
Legal Bites
when I put
membership.
Eva's
Danielle
trial
S.,
on your car.
you are now a member of Bite
Now,
Club.
this is a woman who's not only experienced the shooting of the gun, the throwing of the gun, the punching of holes in the wall, and a tracker on her car, but we also know about him being caught standing in the yard at night. And finally, Your Honor, there's this. A message from Mr. Benefield's first wife, whether true or not.
By the way, those of you who are new to Bite Club, you'll notice that there are member chats that you can, or member emojis that you can use in the chat now. So you can check that out in the chat typing box on the screen. So just so you guys know, if you didn't know already.
This is what Mrs. Benefield believed and knew on that day. I loved you, though finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on our New Year's Eve, on our honeymoon, because you were having trouble.
Which exhibit was that again? I'm sorry. I
That's-
remember reading it, but I don't know exactly.
Exhibit 4, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So to answer a question, where did she get the gun? Did I miss that bit? Was she just wandering around with a gun? So she was also apparently a gun owner. She had a concealed carry license. They both were gun owners. So which is common in Florida. So that's why she had it. And yesterday we saw some exhibits that were some photos from the crime scene investigator, or the crime scene tech, I guess, that took the photos, showing that there was one in the pantry, there was one in a backpack as well. Not exactly the safest ways of storing a firearm, but I guess they were pretty big proponents. And also, Draco Amy, thank you for gifting a Legal Bites membership. Knight, you have been gifted a membership by Draco Amy. So thank you, Draco Amy, very kind and generous. And welcome, Knight. Welcome to Bite Club. All right.
I'm sorry, Exhibit 7. I stand corrected, Judge. Text message from Renee Benefield.
Thank you very much.
So they've established motive, and that has been the evidence that they've presented exclusively. What they've established is that Ms. Benefield wanted to keep Douglas Benefield from their child. They, in an effort to establish that, played the court's recording in the order from the domestic violence.
Oh, I can hear the difference now.
injunction hearing the
Slight
first
difference
time.
in the audio.
They presented the DCF allegations and, of course, Dr. Broder. From that, they want the court to draw the inference that the motive that they claim was created was sufficient for the court to infer that her decision would have been to murder Douglas Benefield. Now, that's a pretty good leap. Again, even though I don't believe it's a relevant element or an issue, to make the leap from resenting your spouse, fearing your spouse, concerned that you're protecting your child and wanting to keep your spouse away, to making a decision to murder your spouse, you would think that they would need to have at least one witness who would come in and say, yeah, I was present at a party one time, and I heard her say, I'll be damned, I'll kill him before I'll let him see my child. Then I think you could make the leap.
So for anybody with audio issues, earbuds do
Instead,
seem to help. But
here's what the state's
it's
witnesses
probably
told
why
us.
I didn't notice a difference at first until people were pointing it out.
Detective Warren told us about what Dr. Quintal had to say about Douglas Benefield, that he was a fake, that he used God to try and ingratiate himself, that he was a controller, that he was violent. Dr. Broder, that Miss Benefield told him she feared Douglas Benefield, that he was an intense personality, angry, a manipulator. And even, Your Honor, Attorney Stephanie Murphy, she was frank enough to acknowledge that in her practice, she's represented quite a few abused women, that the respondents against whom they seek protection are often violent, manipulative, and controlling. And you know how sometimes, Judge, in a conversation, somebody says something and it has the ring of truth. It just kind of hits you where you realize that it's a sound statement that's been made. Dr. Broder talked about appeasement and the strategy that Ms. Benefield used to deal with Douglas Benefield, knowing what she knew about him. By appeasing him, that was her way of best protecting her child, by going along with him, keeping him at bay. These were quotes from Dr. Broder, who was their witness.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
he
tell the
did.
court
He
that
did
in this
basically say
country,
that.
of the abused women that we know of that come forward, closing argument.
It's closing argument.
Of the abused women that we know of, Judge White, they
Oh, so this is
generally
actually
tend to
closing
fall
argument.
into two categories. They're either dead because nobody's listened or believed them, or they're in prison because
Whoa. Okay. So now Doi. So the whole bit about her not testifying earlier was because I guess they had indicated to the court that they wanted to have their closing arguments. So now this is all closing argument. Silly me. So now that's clear to me. We are actually listening to their closing arguments for this hearing. So I wonder how long it's going to be before the judge makes a determination on this. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out. Yeah, Reindeer, she is not testifying. She indicated that the judge actually, he put her under oath. He basically was like, you know, that you have a right to testify and you have a right not to testify. Just want to make sure that this is, you know, freely under your will. Same thing that you would see at trial. So we did that whole rigmarole. So yeah, we might actually get to a ruling sooner rather than later. I thought we were going to hear from more witnesses. Woohoo!
they've taken matters into their own hands and they do not have the resources to fight back. And in this instance, thankfully, Ms. Benefield has backers that have enabled her to fight back. Well, it's very frustrating when I can't read my own notes, Your Honor. So, I would respectfully submit.
Yeah, I guess we're just arguing about the chinchillas today, Tanya.
That was either objective or proper. And I'm going to base that, Your Honor, on the detective, the lead detective, the quarterback of the team that the state called, and that would be Justin Warren. The reason.
And Maverick Gaming. So it's not a bench trial. This is a hearing before the scheduled trial. I don't know exactly when it's scheduled to be. But what was I going to say? This is, sorry, I just got distracted for a second. This is a hearing on a motion to dismiss the entire case before it even goes to trial. It was filed by the defendant on the grounds of stand your ground immunity. So basically saying self-defense, she had a reasonable belief of an imminent danger, and that she therefore, acted in self-defense, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, that's what this is. It's actually a hearing to determine whether or not it can move forward to a trial, and then it'll probably be a jury trial, I would imagine. assuming that the case still proceeds to trial after this hearing, because the judge may decide to dismiss it. I don't think that's going to happen because I think it's still too gray of an area for it to happen, to be honest. I think there's too much to not fully litigate this in front of a jury. Okay.
Reason I went through those two proposed affidavits and compared them to the actual affidavit he filed was
Danielle asked, I missed that
wanted the
detail.
court
I'm
to
sorry.
think about what reasons Detective Warren would possibly have for these actions. We know the affidavit that he filed. The affidavit that he filed neither identifies Douglas Benefield nor Barbara Russell, and alleges that the incident where Miss Benefield received a quote unquote minor scratch.
And I'm sorry that I keep pausing this, but I kind of, since it's a closing argument, I don't know, maybe I should let it go and answer questions later, but this is a good question. It's a follow-up to the previous one. So any further questions, feel free to ask them. I'm going to save them and then answer them a little bit later. But Maverick Gaming, so she could testify during trial if she chooses, assuming it goes to trial. Yes. And I think that's probably why they determined that they didn't want her to testify now, because it's a bit of a gamble, right? If you have her testify now and have the possibility that you dismiss the case altogether, then that's great. You've put all of your firepower up front. You got the case dismissed. That's it. Court's not going to come back after you again because of double jeopardy. That's great. But what if the opposite happens? What if she testifies in this hearing and then the defense loses and then this proceeds to trial? Then at trial, can she invoke her rights under the Fifth Amendment to not incriminate herself? The answer is no, she can't, because she waived it by testifying at the hearing. So probably what their thought is, I think that the defense probably, with that move, that tells me that they probably are thinking there's a good chance that this is still going to go to trial. We're going to do our damnedest at this hearing, but there's a really good chance this is still going to go to trial. And we should preserve your right to not incriminate yourself by testifying at this hearing, so that you preserve your right to not testify at the trial. So yeah, that's probably what the reasoning was behind the scenes. So, okay. Any further questions? And I might even have a question from before saved, but otherwise I'll save them and then answer them in a
Which
bit.
happened on the day before the shooting. But in his two prior proposed affidavits, Your Honor, he has Douglas Benefield in there. He removes him. He has Barbara Russell in there. He removes her. And these, in addition, he maintains that the minor scratch, quote unquote, that Miss Benefield received happened on the day before, despite the fact that in interviewing Dr. Russell, she insisted that it happened the day of the shooting. And then finally, Your Honor, and here's, I think, the coup de grace as to his intentions. Somewhere along the way, not only is Douglas Benefield removed from the affidavit, but the word inadvertently is added to the scratch that Miss Benefield receives, which we articulate in our motion, and as Dr. Russell told Detective Warren, was incurred when Douglas Benefield intentionally and aggressively slammed that box into her side. So, I think Detective Warren's got basically two choices, Your Honor. He's either given us very sloppy, deficient, unreliable investigative work, or he's lied and he's misled the court that signed that warrant because it was consistent with his theory of the case. And what did we know about his theory of the case? Well, we know that he has a fundamental misunderstanding, despite the fact that he's a homicide detective, of homicide. He believes that all homicides are murders. A murder is a crime. A homicide is a death. There's usually an investigation, and the crime, if it's concluded by a fact finder, may be murder. He believes that all people who kill are murderers, regardless
He
of
didn't
whether
say that.
it's excusable or justifiable. So how much of a fair and objective opportunity is Miss Benefield afforded by Detective Warren when in less than 75 minutes after the shooting, he's writing up a search warrant describing the reason for the search warrant, not as a homicide, but as a murder. And of course, it makes perfect sense because we know he believes that any killing is a murder.
He didn't say that. I think
That's not.
And the judge is going to see through this kind of argument too, because obviously he saw the investigator testify, and this is a judge, right? He's trained to see through the BS of the lawyers here. So this idea about like all deaths are murders, all homicides are murders, therefore everyone who kills is a murderer. That is not what the detective said yesterday, so, but I think that what is getting lost in the sauce here in that conversation is what is the legal definition of murder? What is the common definition of murder? What is, like a death, a homicide? All of these terms can have different meanings depending on sort of like what circumstance or universe that we're using them in the courtroom. In the legal universe, homicide and murder have some very specific definitions. But when we're talking about, manner of death, homicide just means that you died because of the actions of some other person. It doesn't mean that there's any sort of fault that's attached. That's the legal definition of homicide or murder or these things, right? Is attaching some kind of intent. The judge is not going to look at that investigator and be like, you made a determination of ultimate guilt. You're Judge Dredd. You are the judge, the jury, and the executioner while being a cop. I did not get that impression from that detective at all. But yeah, I mean, I don't fault this attorney for making the argument as vigorously as he can, to say like, look, the cops were biased at the outset of their investigation. Like they made an early determination, about who was at fault here for this and what happened, and that clouded the rest of their investigation because it created like this tunnel vision for them, right? The problem with doing something like that is you could ignore some very relevant evidence that is required for accuracy and for diligence, to make sure that you are getting the real full picture of the truth with a capital T. So that's really what this attorney is getting at. And I don't fault him for it. There are cases where that has happened. Some people say, as we are making our way through the Menendez trial from 1993, on Mondays, there are a lot of folks that are of the opinion that case was one where there was a relatively early determination, that the brothers did it, and that, that even though there were allegations of abuse by the parents, that the prosecutor specifically just completely ignored all of that evidence and just dismissed it outright. So anyway, there are situations where people believe that kind of stuff happens, whether that's correct or not. It depends on the case, but yeah, so he's going to be making this argument. I don't fault him for it. I think he's gone a little overly robustly in it.
It's not enough, though. In addition, he misrepresents in his affidavit the 2 wounds that Douglas Benefield has suffered. He says specifically that self-defense has been ruled out because it does not appear that Douglas Benefield was facing Ashley Benefield when he was shot, despite the fact that the medical examiner says just the opposite. And what's worse is the medical examiner's opinion is released the day before Detective Warren files his arrest warrant. And in the scheme of common sense, Judge, we've all been at this game for a while. Let's not kid ourselves. Detective Warren hasn't been sitting in his office waiting to hear from the medical examiner's office. He's called the ME's office, And he said, so what do you got? You know, is there anything you can tell me? Is this possibly self-defense? So he gets the shot to the chest wrong because he says he wasn't facing her. And then he gets the shot to the knee wrong, but he gets it wrong because his theory is that Douglas Benefield.
But is it entirely wrong that he wasn't facing her? Like that's the thing. So like this idea that she shot him in the back is wrong because there are no bullets with an entry wound in his back. So that is definitively wrong, I think. But to say that he wasn't facing her, I think an argument could be made. You could look at that entry and exit wound and say, well, she kind of shot him from the side. Maybe he rotated. Maybe she was actually to his side. I don't know. But you know, reasonable minds can differ, you know, as some of our friends like to say. You know, that you know, this whole hellfire and damnation on this point is I think going a little it's not convincing to me, because you can live in a world where he's not shot in the back, but he's also not shot from the front, you know? So
Benefield was facing the closet when he was shot, which makes perfect sense. That he would be shot in the outside of his knee instead of the inside. And that's a warrant that he presents under oath to a circuit judge. And the reason he's removed Douglas Benefield's name, even though Detective Warren couldn't even bring himself to say that he's never had a judge question him about an arrest warrant before the judge signed off, I dare say, without knowing, that's certainly not going to be Your Honor's position. I would guess in time, if not already, the court's asked a couple of questions once or twice before signing an arrest warrant. He doesn't want that in there because an astute and street smart judge may say, well, what was the relationship between these two? Can you tell me a little bit more? Might this be self-defense? He's completely misled the court. I want to close, Your Honor, by reading.
and he's actually with
quotes, if I
me.
can.
She's on the floor here. She'll jump back on the chair soon enough.
This is from a third district opinion, Your Honor, Guillermo Penovar versus State of Florida, 338 Southern 3rd, 990. It's a February 2nd, 2022 case. Mr. Penovar appealed the trial court's denial. The petition was granted and the trial court's order was reversed and quashed. The third DCA said the following: the trial court, based on its conclusion that Penovar's motion below was not sworn and did not rely on record evidence, together with Penovar's failure to present any evidence or testimony to support his claim of immunity, denied the motion. For the reasons discussed herein, we grant the petition, quash the trial court's order, and remand with instructions. A defendant's motion to dismiss under Florida's Stand Your Ground law can establish a prima facie claim of self-defense immunity from criminal prosecution, even though the motion to dismiss is neither sworn to by someone with personal knowledge or supported by evidence or testimony establishing the facts in the motion to dismiss. Your Honor, at no point in any capacity whatsoever has the state addressed the facts in our sworn motion to, in our Stand Your Ground motion to dismiss.
Scorpio, I will be sure to write Indy an evaluation on her live stream performance today. So, you know, don't worry. She will be hearing about this.
They have not addressed what Ms. Benefield knew about Douglas Benefield on that day. They have not addressed his status as a forcible felon in the home of Ashley Benefield having assaulted her. I believe this motion compels the court to grant it. Thank you for the court's patience.
Thank you very much, sir. Rebuttal?
Yes. Judge, the state has not addressed the facts in the motion because they're not evidence in this case. I believe we've all been doing this a long time, and the defense's argument about all of these facts that were known to Ashley, that's all written down, not sworn to, not evidence. The argument that was made might be okay for sitting around in a living room talking to your friends. However, the
Oh.
legislature and the Supreme Court of Florida have defined very strict laws for rules of evidence and what is reliable and what is allowed to be viewed as evidence. And an unsworn to motion written in the fantastical way that this motion is written. If the court has read it, then I'm sure you know, it is written more like a fiction novel than a legal memorandum.
Damn, that is some spice. She wore her red jacket today because she was bringing the heat. It is a fiction novel. None of that is real. Everyone in the room is dumber for having heard your fantasy novel, defense attorney. Oh my God, that is quite a lot. But I will say, I mean, he was reading from stuff that seems new, right? That was strange. That was strange. And I think there were some folks in the chat that were like, where did we hear about this? We didn't. We didn't. It was stuff that they had put in the papers in their motion, but they didn't bring any kind of evidence for it. So, which is interesting, probably because here's a little bit of crystal ball speculation here. I think that probably because all of the stuff that he was talking about that was in the motion there, but not testified to in this hearing, probably because most of that, if not all of that, would come from the defendant. In which case, you have to make this decision of, does she testify? Doesn't she testify? Because if she testifies, she waives her Fifth Amendment right at trial if they're not successful at this hearing. So I don't know. Maybe they made like a game time decision for like how things were looking to see if she would testify. I don't know. Or maybe they made that decision early on and they were just like, we're gonna throw all this paper at the judge and hope that he dismisses it based on the papers as opposed to the witnesses at the hearing. But yeah, so far this is some spice. we got some serrano peppers in here.
The legislature and the Supreme Court in no way would expect this.
Christian Williams, very true.
As true, as substantive evidence. Not only is it substantive evidence, but the defense is arguing you have to take it as true. Anyone can write anything down on a piece of paper and submit it to you and go, well, you have to take it as true. So no, the state is not addressing these fantastical ideas that are in this motion. The state is addressing what is allowed by the law. And the law says that once the burden shifts, yes, everything defense counsel said about a motion doesn't have to be sworn to. It makes a prima facie case. And I'm sure Your Honor understands this. I don't know that everyone else does, but prima facie case only gets us here. It doesn't mean that all.
I know Your Honor understands this. I don't know if everyone else does. She's talking about the defense attorneys, like them. She's like, I know you get it. It's you. Like, who else is here, right? There are people in the courtroom too behind them, but she's not talking about them. She's gotten real spicy, real spicy today.
All of that is proven and has to be disproven. It just means the burden shifts, and now the state has to show that she's not entitled to immunity or self-defense. Even if the court wanted to take what the defense said as evidence, what we just heard was Doug Benefield grabbed her arm and blocked her way, I believe is what the defense counsel said. In no courtroom would that be enough to shoot someone 3 times. Additionally, even with the state's evidence,
Hines,
she was
very
the
true.
only one that was armed. There's no indication from anyone that Doug Benefield was armed. You saw the pictures of him laying there, dying on the floor. There's no gun next to him. There's no knife next to him. There's no, bat next to him. And you saw, like I said, the pictures of the defendant. And multiple times, she was not beat up. She did not have serious injuries. There is no reasonable belief that this type of force was necessary to combat imminent death or great bodily harm. And the state would ask you to deny the motion.
All right. Thank you both very much. Did you want to submit proposed orders? You don't have to. I'm just putting it out there. I know in some cases we do, some cases we don't. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You will do much better than I would anyway.
All right. Now,
Platitudes. The
I
platitudes with this defense
did
attorney.
speak with the court reporter's office, and unfortunately, their staffing is a bit low right now. So it might be a little bit of time before I can get a transcript because I obviously, as we talked about, either side is going to appeal. So I figured we'll get a transcript anyway. That way I can cite to portions of the actual record in support. It might also streamline your appeal. So I will just say that I'll get an order out as quickly as I possibly can in light of all of those issues. All right.
I would assume you can release that date that we chose in
September.
So do we need to let your JA know, or are you?
No, she's listening in.
Kelly, we need to release that date.
At least you did that. I was joking how I tend to talk to the air because I know my JA is listening, and I said I wasn't going to do that because it looks weird. But so thank you for doing that. All right, thank you both very much. Excellent presentations over the last day or so. I appreciated the written work product. The presentations have been excellent. So thank you very much.
I would agree. I mean, I haven't seen the written portion, but
The court's order told me all I needed to know about Your Honor's academic acumen, but I want to tell the board I had not spent enough time in front of Your Honor until this hearing to be able to reflect on Your Honor's temperament, which has been wonderful. We appreciate it.
Well, nice to meet you all. Also, I did last night go over the remaining emails, the ones, and so I will be issuing an order on that as well. All right. Thank you all. We'll be off the record.
all right. Off the record. I wonder how long it's going to be before he comes to a decision. Oh, we're gonna see a little bit of her before they close down this stream. So I will say, in terms of courtroom attire, she looks good. What she wore yesterday, what she wore today, overall presentation has been good. Not much to write home about. But it's, she looks clean. She looks put together. She looks, yeah. So, okay. So that is the hearing. This has been, we got some spice, especially at the end. We got, let's see. We got some new bits of information that was not previously given by the media. Also interesting whenever that happens. But just if you've been following this case or you want to continue following this case, just pay attention to what the media says about it and what people say about it. I'm still seeing on Twitter, people talking about how she shot him 4 times in the back, because that is the perception that everybody had going into this hearing. That was the perception that I had going into the hearing, was that she had done that. At the very least, the hearing changes my opinion on this case, although I hadn't known about it before, like a couple days ago, really. But going into it, I was like, yeah, there's no way that she wins this motion. This is definitely, like, the only way that this doesn't go to trial is if she negotiates a plea deal with the state. But now I don't know. I mean, I still think that she probably loses the motion, but I think it definitely goes to trial at this point, because I don't see this being a super strong case either way. There's a lot of gray area here for them to parse through. And like there's the fact that he seems to have had anger issues, which, by the way, anger issues does not equal abuse. We can talk about in the same sentence at one time he punched a wall, at one time he, fired a gun into the ceiling. Firing a gun into the ceiling is just like, that's so reckless that, like, that is admittedly very, very, very alarming. But punching a wall as an isolated event is, while alarming, it's not abuse, because it is someone choosing to take out their aggression on an inanimate object as opposed to a person. So there's definitely, like, I feel very uneasy about the anger issues that he seems to have had, but whether or not that means that he was abusive, I don't know. I am not convinced one way or another. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Maybe these really were just two crazy isolated incidents, that there was a lot of time in between them, and there was a lot of time in between the second incident and when she killed him. So it doesn't seem like it really doesn't seem like a black and white case to me at all. So I don't see her winning this motion. I don't see them negotiating a plea deal either, unless there's something that I'm sure there's plenty that they know that I don't. But yeah. Okay. Let's get some questions here. Ashley Boyer wants to know, what is the state's burden of proof here? So good question, because I think there might be a question here that I want to make sure I get. There's a few questions here. Okay. Okay. So the burden of proof at the hearing is clear and convincing evidence, and the state has the burden in both cases, in the hearing and at trial. So at the hearing, it's clear and convincing evidence, which is in between beyond reasonable doubt, which is the highest one, and then preponderance of the evidence, which is what you see in civil cases. So, for example, in the Johnny Depp trial, he had to prove with a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not, meaning if you follow American football, you get the football across the 50-yard line, tiny inches, like that's all you need is just over the 50-yard line and you win. That's enough for preponderance. Beyond reasonable doubt, if there is any amount of common sense doubt that is reasonable, then the state doesn't win. So here they had to show by clear and convincing evidence, which is somewhere in between those two. So that's another reason why, if the state wins this hearing, it's not a foregone conclusion that they'll win at trial, because it happens, right? You have that shift in their burden of proof. Their burden gets a lot higher. You nice and cozy. There you go. Good puppers. Their burden gets higher for the state. The state's burden gets higher. Their hurdle that they have to clear over to win the case is higher at trial than it is here. So it's not a foregone conclusion that they'll win at trial if they win this hearing as well. Galaxy, do you think not testifying makes defendant look bad? I think that at trial, when you're in front of a jury, you definitely have to calculate how it looks to the common person, to someone who is not trained in law, trained at understanding, the legal reasons why someone would choose to not testify. If you talk to a lawyer, you talk to a judge, you talk to someone who engages in these kind of legal arguments on a regular basis, or engages with these kind of legal arguments on a regular basis, it's not, you're a lot less likely to be impacted by, truth or lack of truth based on the defendant's not testifying, especially if you understand the legal reasons why she wouldn't be. So the judge, for sure, because the judge is making the determination at this hearing, he definitely understands her Fifth Amendment constitutional rights. I mean, the judge is arguably most concerned with the rights of the parties involved in the case, which in a criminal case is just the defendant. There are no constitutional rights of the state that the judge is concerned about. But the judge is definitely going to be very concerned about the defendant's constitutional rights. So her choosing to not testify, he's not going to allow that to be like, oh, well, maybe, she's actually really guilty and she's trying to hide or something, like if you were innocent, you would want to, shout it from the rooftops. There are people that will often think that or feel that way, which is understandable. But if you understand the reasons why someone might choose not to testify, there are so many reasons that don't have to do with the truth of what happened. So at trial, I'm assuming this is going to go to trial. It's probably going to be a very different story, because so much of the defense argument comes from things she says she experienced. And I think that I don't know Florida juries very well in comparison to like the rest of the country, but I would imagine that because so much of their case comes from her accounts, that there's a decent chance that they would have her testify. RP Games, thank you so much for your question. Is prosecution saying she has to wait for serious bodily harm to be done to her before she can defend herself? That's not the law to my knowledge. It doesn't sound like that's what they were saying before, but it sounded like, I mean, they were suggesting the fact that there weren't any other weapons in the room. He didn't have a gun. The gun was registered to her. It was her gun. You know, he didn't have a bat on him. He didn't have like any of this other stuff. So, you know, there's no evidence of these other items being nearby that would suggest that he was this massive threat. You know, there was also testimony about his size. There was no testimony about her size at this hearing. So, you know, he was 5'9", 5'10", maybe about 160 pounds, which is, you know, basically like, I think average weight for that height. And I think he's technically above the national average for men at 5'9", 5'10", but not by much. So, you know, he's not exactly this like massive guy. However, she was a ballerina. She was a swimsuit model. So, you know, relatively speaking, it could be that she's that much smaller than him. You know, ballerinas tend to be very petite. In order to get to a certain level as a ballerina, you have to be little. Like there's no way I could have ever been like in no universe could I have ever been been a ballerina because of height or weight. But so, you know, that could play a role in these kinds of things, but we didn't actually hear about like how tall or how much she weighed at the time. At least not in the hearing anyway. Cheryl M, she's 5'9". Interesting. Okay, so she's that I mean, that helps the state side. If she was 5'9", she's about the same height as him. So how is he going to be using his physical prowess against her if they're about the same size? Maybe he's got more muscle on her. Maybe. But yeah, Chrissy Lyon, yeah, ballerinas can be tall but very willowy and slender. Very true as well. But, you know, I would want to know what her weight was with 5'9". So I don't know. I mean, that it's so far based on what I know, it sounds like their body sizes are a little bit similar. There's at least there's no obvious differential between his size and her size that you could say like, oh yeah, obviously this guy's gonna easily overpower her if he's got a temper, if he's got this and that. RP Games, I think the judge could grant the dismissal, but would probably want to let a jury decide the issue, as there are some questions that might leave him doubting his decision either way. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree, because judges are very reluctant to take a decision away from a jury, especially if there's any amount of gray area, which is the other big reason why I think this is going to go to trial, because there's just too much gray area here. There's too much gray area in this one. Knight says shooting a gun goes to show he may be at her house with a gun. You mean previously, that previous incident? Yeah, I mean, there was also testimony that he regularly carried a loaded gun on him. So there was testimony to that. So we could expect, she may have had the expectation that he had a gun on him. You know, like she may be like, well, every single time that I've seen him, he's had a gun on him. And now he's starting to fire up in the way that I've seen him fire up in the past. For example, when he shot the ceiling, and he's starting to do these things that he used to do. And so I'm thinking this is where it's gonna go. He doesn't want to move to Maryland. I'm moving to Maryland with our kid and with my mom. You know, like I can see that, but we haven't heard that testimony. So I would, you know, and again, that would come from her actually testifying. So probably going to happen at trial. Jan, is this anger issues PTSS or PTSD maybe? If you saw action in the Navy, maybe, I don't know, but we can't quite assume that though, because not everyone that serves has PTSD. And not everyone that even goes to war ends up with PTSD. There are so many different reasons why it will happen to some and not others. And I apologize if I've missed some questions here. But this, let's see, I'm going to scroll up just a little bit just to see if there are any more questions that I missed while I was answering those other ones. But there are so many great points in the chat right now. Draco Amy, yeah, power imbalance can have nothing to do with who is bigger or stronger sometimes. Yeah, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it is psychological, sometimes it is yeah, but if we're going to consider those, they have to be brought, in front of the trier of fact to consider them. Obviously, we can't assume that those will be the case. But those are absolutely excellent points, and I agree with you. So one of the other things that I wanted to do is also, someone sent me a TikTok from the, I've got to find it again, from the daughter, actually, Eva. So we're gonna watch this. This is gonna be really, really interesting. Hang on. So she's been posting a lot of TikToks apparently, and voicing her thoughts on this case, on this trial, which she's allowed to do if there's no gag order or what have you. So I'm not on TikTok, but someone sent this a link to her channel, her account. How do the young kids do this? I feel like such a boomer saying that, but so she's in her 20s. She was 15 when they met, so I think she's about 20, 21, something like that. Now she's literally orphaned. So she's been voicing some opinions on this, and she apparently was at this hearing yesterday and today as well. So, okay, let me share this, and we'll chit chat about this, because this is, it's interesting. Okay.
As some of y'all may know, my dad was unalived by his wife 3 years ago. And guess what? I know everybody's been waiting for the day. Next week is her first in-person hearing, which means I'm going to see her in person for the first time ever. Not just kidding. For the first time since she killed my dad. I haven't seen her since 2019. The last time I saw her, she tried to convince me that my dad killed my mom. And that was the same time that she was trying to get the coroner's office to dig up my mom's grave. My dad said yes too. He was like, "Bitch, if this is really gonna get you off of my dick, we'll unbury my dead ex-wife, my late wife." And crazy. She was crazy. So, what's funny is her attorney, when her attorney spoke to like a news outlet one time and called my TikToks cute, but worried that it's going to affect the jury pool. Are you fucking kidding me? My TikToks affecting the jury pool? You know what else is going to affect the jury pool? When the jury's sitting there looking at me with no parents, and then looking at her, hearing, yeah, she shot and killed. It was self-defense. Multiple rounds were fired. He was turned away. Neither of the DNA was found on one another. There was no gunpowder residue on my dad, meaning that she was multiple feet away from him. But yeah, my TikToks, my cute little TikToks, are gonna affect the jury pool. Bullshit. But on another note, I don't know what to wear. What does one wear to their late father's murderer's first in-person hearing?
She's spicy, right? I mean, I feel bad laughing because it's like obviously terrible circumstances, but but I mean, she's a firecracker, right? This is very, very spicy. If I know of a good video on courtroom dress that someone could send a link to her from this channel right here. But but anyway, the one thing that I would be concerned about with her posting these TikToks and things is just to make sure that she doesn't say anything that is inconsistent with what she would testify to trial, because I would imagine that she would be called to testify. I would definitely imagine so. So, the defense attorneys are probably watching every single one. I mean, 100% they are watching every single one of these to try to see if there's going to be anything inconsistent with what she says at trial. Um, but yeah, tainting the jury pool, not so much of a concern because people are talking about the case, whether it's her or Law and Crime or Court TV. That's on the internet. But that's also what voir dire, what the jury selection process is for, is to find people that have not been following this case, have not come across it. And although this is a case that is, yes, getting national attention, international attention, because there are folks in this chat that are from around the world. But regardless of that, it's not the biggest trial that we've seen, right? Like we've seen a number of trials that have been much bigger than this one, and they still were able to find a jury pool. Like this is not going to be an issue here. But yeah. Maverick Gaming. Now she's not under oath technically, but they would use it to make her seem dishonest, I'm guessing. Yeah, you could still use it to impeach her. Even if it wasn't a previous statement that she made under oath, if it's an inconsistent statement with something that she says at trial in one of these TikToks, they could still bring up her TikTok and use it to impeach her. So, yeah. Yep. But yeah, I would anticipate that she would testify. I mean, at the very least to talk. I mean, it's highly relevant to know what the daughter thought about whether or not her dad was abusive of her mom, of her stepmom, who's like 10 years older than her, of her. Had she seen her half sibling with her dad? Like had she seen? There's she's quite a window. She's quite a window to find out what her dad was like. So absolutely, she would be called as a witness. I would anticipate that. So we'll see. We shall see. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you guys. And one more question here, Draco Amy. How do you defend getting something wrong versus telling a lie when you're being impeached? Well, when you are the witness, can't really do that. You have to answer the question that's being asked of you. And that's the thing that a lot of witnesses have a hard time with, is there's a natural tendency to want to argue when you are caught in an awkward position, that you want to either explain or argue or something like that. But you have to resist that temptation, because that is what redirect is for. So, you've got the direct examination by the friendly side, cross-examination by the other side, then redirect is by the friendly side again. The purpose of cross-examination is to poke holes in all the stuff that was in direct. Like they just gave this whole long narrative of how, this is the guy's best friend, and they were best friends forever, and the guy did all these terrible things to the best friend forever. Then on cross-examination, then the opposite side gets up and pokes all these holes and says, well, you weren't really best friends because you did this and that to this guy, and you did that and this to this guy. And here's you being completely dishonest, by the way. And also you were, engaging in fraud. Like there's all these things you can do to just dismantle that redirect. Or sorry, to dismantle that direct examination. Redirect then comes in after cross-examination to sort of pick up some of those bigger pieces that came off that picture and kind of put them back together as well as you can. So when you're being impeached and you want to explain what you said or whatever, there's a certain amount of trust that you have to have in the attorneys that are representing your friendly side, that they are going to come in on redirect and give you that opportunity to explain, because you don't really have that opportunity. I mean, you can push back with the attorney that's cross-examining you. You can say, well, I can't really answer that yes or no. The only way for me to accurately answer your question is if I say blah 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 blah, like to give this full answer. Like, giving yes or no is not a way to accurately respond fully to your question. That would be like the best way to sort of fight back on something like that. But otherwise, generally speaking, you've got to wait for redirect, when the friendlier side is going to come back in and be like, okay, so we talked about, on cross-examination, this came up. Explain the context, like you can do that kind of thing. So, Katoa, couldn't that video be considered hearsay? 100%. Yes, these are out of court statements right here. It depends on what they would be brought in to prove. Are they being entered into the record or introduced as evidence, to prove the truth of the matter asserted, to prove the truth of what she said in the video, or would they be brought in to impeach her statements? In that case, it's proper to bring in these prior statements that would otherwise be considered hearsay. So, so let's say she's testifying and she, says one thing on direct examination. Then on cross-examination, she's kind of asked about it again. She says the same thing, but they know that there's this other TikTok video over there that says something different, and she's changed her story, she's changed her perspective or something. Then they can bring that in, not to be introduced as evidence, but to be put in front of the jury to impeach her. So they wouldn't necessarily be able to go back and watch this TikTok after the trial when they're deliberating. Sometimes you can request pieces of evidence to re-examine them, et cetera, if you have a particular question. Then that wouldn't be the case with something like this if it's being brought into court only for the purposes of impeaching her statement. Let's see. Shireen, what was her name? And I see that you got it now. It's Ava Benefield. So EVA, Eva or Ava, depending on how they pronounce it. So yeah. Let's see. RP Games. Could those videos be used to impeach the deceased character? What they would do is how this would happen is, let's say she says in a TikTok, she talks about how her dad got really mad at her one time and punched a wall, or pushed her down somewhere, or something like that, some kind of violence against her. Let's say that she says it in some TikTok. It's buried on the internet. But she says, no, my dad was always very, my dad never had any issues. He never touched me. He never, this or that. Then they could bring that other statement in to say that it's not impeaching his deceased character. It's impeaching her statement, but it has the same kind of effect. So it has the effect of giving a different perspective on who he was. But what it is it's still impeaching her prior statement, because this is a witness that is testifying to these kinds of matters, but she said differently before than she's saying in court. This is obviously all hypothetical. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but that is what could happen. Okay. Yeah, I think that's about, I think all the oh, here's another question. Christian Williams, do you know why it took them so long to talk about a trial date? I don't know. I don't know, actually. Yeah, I don't know if a date has been set, and I don't know why. Oh, there's more TikToks. Okay, I just got a DM. There's more TikToks if you guys want to see them. Okay. Okay, let's watch this one too. This is going to be interesting. Yeah, Marissa M, thank you so much for sending that. I am gonna let's watch another one. This is actually so fascinating. Now that the hearing has been like cut short in comparison to like what I was expecting, I'm like, yeah, let's watch some TikToks. Okay. All right. So this is going to be like 3 minutes long.
Okay, listen up, guys. I know all you little sewer rats want a story time, so I'm gonna give it to you. I even pulled up my chair. And
She is quite a character. This is really funny.
And so, first of all, for this comment, short answer, yes. Long answer, no. Okay, so when I was 15, my mom died of an underlying heart condition. And then so basically my dad was out of town, and then I came home from school and I found her. So that was the start of a lot of trauma. And then after that, my dad came home and he specifically told me, don't worry, Eva, I'm never going to get married again. Well, he didn't use those exact words, but that's how I remember it.
Yikes.
And then after that, 9 months later, he married. He was like, it was a Friday after school, and he married. It was a Friday after school, and he was like, so I'm seeing this girl. And I was like, okay. And then he picked her up from the airport the next day, and I met her. And he was like, she's super cool. She's a model and a ballerina. And I was like, okay, like, cool. She's kind of hot, but I don't see the hype. She's 23, dude. Like, come on. Then I was like, all right, well,
she's kind of hot, but I don't see the hype. But yeah, so far there's just a lot.
a lot of dates.
Especially if you know what I mean, we know what happened.
Like, you're a single man, I get it. And then the next day he was like, we need to have a family meeting. And I was like, no, because we're not a family. And the only thing that you should have to tell me is if you propose. And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he goes, we're married. And I was like, what? So I drove myself, even though I only had my permit. If you're a cop, please.
That was not if you heard a crash, I was pouring tea into a cup and the lid came off. I just wasn't holding it. It wasn't like for sound effect. But yeah, finding out that they're married finding out that they're married like that. I know it was perfect timing. That really was perfect timing. I just was being lazy and not holding the top of the teapot. But finding out that they're married like that. I mean, she's really not overselling this story either. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Please don't arrest me. This was years ago. I only had my permit and I drove myself to my best friend's house and I was like, guys, my dad's actually married to this little skank. And they were like, what? And then I was like, yeah. And I have two older, like, half brothers. They're on my mom's side though. And I told them and they're like, she's younger than us. And I was like, I know. And so then after that, I just kind of like tried to get used to her, but
Jeez, my dad's already married to the skank, she says. I mean, this is, I am not taking this to say that I am saying that the defendant here is a skank or anything like that, but I just appreciate her storytelling style. It's pretty funny. And honestly, she's been through a lot. Like this poor girl has been through so much and is continuing to go through so much. And the fact that she is able to maintain this sense of humor is honestly so amazing. I just, there's so much power to her.
But she was like totally not that nice. She was cool at first, but then she wasn't. And here's why. I only have 3 minutes. Anyways, there's gonna be part 2, don't worry. But I was like, so hold on. So then I tried to get used to her because I was like, okay, well, like, this is reality. He's married. And so then she at first she was nice, and then she kind of would like twist my words and make my dad get mad at me. Keep in mind, me and my dad were like very close. Like, since my mom died, me and my dad were always close. I was always like me and my dad were just best friends. I was close with my mom too, but like me and my dad like had a different level kind of bond. And so when she did this, it really like affected me and my dad's friendship / father-daughter relationship. And that didn't cut it on my end. So I became a little bitch back. And actually, all right, I'm going to do a part 2. Okay.
Wait, hang on. How do I get to part 2? I don't know. I don't know how to do TikTok. Hopefully Marissa sent me another link. And Marissa said that there's about 6 more TikToks after this one from her perspective. I want to see all of them, honestly. I really do. Okay, maybe I'm going to stop sharing this real quick, and then I'm going to see if I can find the other ones. I don't even know when this was from, because this is how unfamiliar I am with TikTok. That like I can't even tell like what date this was posted. Oh, here's another one. Okay, thank you, Marissa. Just keep sending me the links to the new ones to watch. Okay. All right. I am just wow, this is crazy. Okay. Eva the freaking diva. She totally is, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Okay, so here's part 2. Basically after that, I was being a brat, but like I was an ideal child at this point. I was 16. I had worked out every single morning before school, 8 hours of school, then 2 hours of lacrosse practice. Like I barely got into any trouble until like maybe when I was like 17 or 18. But like, come on, I had to try my first beer and whatnot. God, why did I wink like that? I didn't really get into trouble ever. I was a good kid. Anyway, so she was being a brat, acting like my mom. And I was like, you're not my mom at all. And my dad was like, no, dude, like you need a mother figure. And I was like, no, I already have a mother figure. So like, I don't need this 23-year-old who's younger than my actual mother figure, who, keep in mind, it's my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law like really stepped up and helped me out to like fill in for where I needed a mother figure at these crucial developing ages when I was 16. Anyways, so then I'm just kind of rambling. I'm sorry. This is going to be like an
Wait, so okay, so there's another sibling then. If she has a sister-in-law, that means she has a brother. Interesting. So we there may be more family members to hear from at trial. Maybe. Possibly.
8-part story, even though I literally have a shorter story time down below. But I figured this is more fun. I have my chair. It's like I get my kids a little story. So then after that, we took in one of my friends. She ended up living with me because she needed a place to stay. And that's like not my business. So that's what I'm going to keep it at. And
oh, these are half brothers from the mom's side. Okay, that might be even more interesting to hear from, because if you think about, sorry, I'm pausing real quick here, but that they might be even more interesting to hear from, because if you think about it from like a loyalty perspective, if there's any sort of a suspicion that he killed their mom because he's their stepdad, she is their mom, they are going to be very loyal to, just as a default. Obviously, so many things could have happened during their lives that can change this, but like, assuming that everything was otherwise healthy and, you know, they had a good relationship with their mom, et cetera, I would think that they would be happy to testify. No, there were some things that he did that were like creepy as shit, you know, like that, like he did these things that really made us uncomfortable, that really, you know, that really were not good to our mother. So I could totally see that being the case. So I'm even more interested to hear from these 2 stepbrothers, if they are not even his biological children, but they lived in a house with them to a certain extent, even if they didn't live full time, but they saw stuff and they talked to their mom, and they, like she could have said things to them, outside of his presence about like things that were happening or things that they saw that were unexplained injuries or, things like that. So yeah, I would be very interested to hear from them.
Then it was awesome. Like things with Ashley kind of sucked, but I was like, whatever, because like I have my best friend living with me, and I'm in high school, so I'm like having a great time making all these friends. And then shortly after she moved in, Ashley and my dad came upstairs one night, and they were like, "Hey, y'all are gonna have a little." So you said, my friend. I'm not gonna use her real name. So I'm gonna pretend her name is Surfboard. Eva,
Surfboard
you
because I looked
have
at
a
my
little
surfboard
sister on the
just
way,
like-
and we were like, "What? Ashley's pregnant?" Which is weird because after Ashley and him got married, my dad got his tubes tied, and then I guess before.
Oh, okay. She's about to okay.
They got married. He got his tubes tied. After they got married, she was like, "You should like reverse it," and my dad was like, "Okay." And apparently, it wasn't. They weren't supposed to be able to have a kid for a while, but then boom, they had a kid. So there was a little baby on the way, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, Dad, come on. I can't catch a break. This is freaking bullshit." And so then after that, like, we were just dealing with Ashley, who was having a terrible pregnancy. She was sick all the time, and my dad was at work because he already had his job, and she convinced my dad to start an international ballet company. So they started like it was like this huge project, and then she got pregnant, and so then my dad had to do all the work because Ashley was like sick all the time.
Wow. Okay, let's see. There's got to be more. Yep. Okay, so that was 2. Now let's watch part 3. Oh, this is so fascinating. Oh my gosh, you guys, she is like so fun to watch, honestly. I mean, this is obviously the circumstances are very sad, but she is so very oh my gosh, Indy is really cozy. Look at this. Look at this pup. She is in total snoozer town. She doesn't care about anything or anyone right now. Oh my gosh, look at that doggo. But Draco Amy, awkward question, is the baby actually his? I mean, he was making every action to claim the child as his. So depending on the state, different states have different standards for, like, let's say like paternity in terms of inheritances are concerned. Like in California, they don't do like DNA tests post, after death, but they do, if the father made appearances and basically took in the child, like affirmatively decided to take in the child and show them that they are his child. They are, showing them to other people in the public and that kind of thing. Like that is, you can claim inheritance after that, depending on testamentary documents and stuff. But yeah, anyway, but yeah, in some states, there might be DNA and all that kind of stuff for that. But I don't know. I mean, he definitely claimed the child as his own for sure. So, okay, let's do the next one, part 3. This is really great. This is she's a fantastic storyteller here, and it's so interesting to get her perspective on it too.
Okay, part 3. Where did I leave off? So she was having a terrible pregnancy. My dad was managing this like crazy international ballet company that like apparently was like a huge deal. And so he was stressed out, and I was stressed out because he was stressed out, and Ashley was like having a terrible pregnancy. And anyways, so then Ashley decides that she's gonna go live with her mom in Florida for the time being. Because she was having such a bad pregnancy, like she was like just sick all the time. Well, I don't know. I've never been pregnant, so I don't really know like how bad they can get, but I guess they can get very bad, like the symptoms and stuff. So she went down to stay with her mom in Florida because my dad didn't have the time to take care of her juggling all of these things. Keep in mind, also, me and Surfboard were still living in my house, like, and we had all of these high school things that my dad had to like attend for. So anyways, so she went down to Florida, and my like things got better because she was out of the picture for me and my dad. Me and my dad were so freaking close. So I was like, cool, Ashley's not here anymore. And then one day, it was like probably a couple months later, I came home from school and my dad wasn't home and neither was Surfboard. And Ashley's car was just like gone from the driveway, which was weird because Surfboard and I drove to school in her car that morning. And so my car was parked behind Ashley's car. Somehow her car was gone, even though she was parked in basically. And then I went inside and all of her stuff was gone too. And then there was a note on the bed and I was like, fuck, all right, I'm going to have to pick up all the pieces. I know exactly what happened. So my dad came home, he read the note, and I've never seen that man other than the time that he cried at my mom's funeral. I could just see like the hurt in his eyes. He felt betrayed. He didn't say anything, but like I could tell he was upset. So she left him. And then I was like, I kind of for a while, like things were weird. And then things got really good. Me and my dad were like super close at this point. Surfboard had moved out also at this point, I think. So it was just me and my dad. We were super close. But then Ashley started calling CPS on my dad. So I would get like my dad was out of town all the time because he traveled a lot. So I would get like, first of all, I was living home alone essentially in this huge house that like has lots of doors and windows, which isn't like, I was fine with that. I was very mature for my age and I knew how to, my dad had been traveling for years anyways. And I also had like my half siblings and their wives in town. So CPS started showing up at my door every single day, which I was like, what the hell? And then cops started showing up too. So I was like, what the heck? I'm running out.
Oh my God. So yeah, that's pretty wild that is happening after she moves out. Okay. Another one. Here's part 4, I think. Yes, this is part 4. Okay. Galaxy, that's a good question. And I think you asked this earlier. I'm sorry I didn't catch it. Playing the devil's advocate here, could life insurance play a role with any of the parties involved? Absolutely. That could be a reason to motivate someone to testify in a particular way. Yeah, because if she's convicted of murdering him, then she wouldn't get life insurance, assuming that he has it. I would assume, I don't know Florida law that well, but in California, at least there's a law that you cannot inherit money from someone that you killed, that you murdered. Yeah, that's something. And then also Sokoto earlier asked, how old is she today? I think she's 20 or 21. Okay, next one. Let's do it. This is, wow. I would imagine that telling these stories is also very like therapeutic for her. I feel like it would be for me.
All right, so part 4. Then CPS and the police were showing up at my house like every single day. And so I would call my dad. Well, I remember one day specifically, the police were like crawling around my house and I called my dad. I was freaking out. I was like, dude, something's going on. So he called the neighbor and the neighbor came out and I like snuck through the back door, got in my Jeep and like when the neighborhood was really small, I went around the neighborhood just so I could like see the front. Cause I didn't like, what if there was an intruder in the house and like, I didn't see it, but somebody else saw, I don't know. I freaked out cause I have anxiety. And so I went and I started talking to the cops and they were like, do you have firearms in here? And I was like, I'm not talking to y'all until my dad gets here. Sorry. So then my dad got there and things were cleared up. But then for some reason I had to like.
Smart girl. Better yet, don't talk to them until you have a lawyer present. But at the very least, waiting until your parent gets home is also a good idea.
Move out of my house for a couple month period of time just because I had to live with my brother. I don't really know why. Also, a lot of this, like, I did repress, like, a lot of this time period just because, like, it was pretty traumatic. I would think I was like 17 at this, 16 or 17. No, I was definitely 17 at this point, or maybe almost 18. I don't know. So then things were like fine. Me and my dad were still super close, but I moved out. And then the summer before senior year, I moved back in with my dad. I remember that. And then me and my dad still awesome, like doing great. He apparently had reconciled his relationship with Ashley, and he would go down to Florida periodically. And then I did like one semester of senior year.
Okay, so hang on. She's calling CPS on him while he's in South Carolina because I believe he was living with his daughter in Charleston. So he's in South Carolina. The defendant is in Florida, and she's calling CPS on him, even though she has the kid with her. It's a little confusing why she's calling CPS on him if he's not even around the kid, because remember that his divorce lawyer testified yesterday that he had never even met his child until they were able to like push for it through the court system, because she didn't even tell him that she was going to be giving birth, or that she was, going into labor and all the kind of stuff.
And my dad was traveling between like all the states that he had to go to all the time, and then he also was traveling to Florida to be with Ashley and the baby, who I think was born at this point. But I asked my dad to keep me out of keep me out of their relationship because that had caused so much trauma. And he respected me because we were so close that he did not tell me anything. He'd occasionally show me pictures of the baby because he did eventually want me and the baby to have a relationship. And so I was fine with that, but I never really asked questions about him and Ashley. I just assumed they were fine. So then he decided to move to Florida full time because I was at this point 18 and I was about to start college here in Charleston. And so he was like, I'm just going to get you your own apartment. And I'm not going to lie, I was a spoiled brat. And keep that in mind because things also get really crazy in later parts. So keep in mind, Eva was kind of a spoiled. I mean, like I had a job and stuff, like I'd pay for some of my own things, but my dad essentially paid for everything, which I'm very grateful for. Anyways, he moved to Florida. I stayed here. Things were great. He texts me every single morning. He texts me a Bible verse. And so that's when I knew he was awake. And when I responded, he knew I was awake. And so then he would call me, check in for the day, see what I needed, see what he could do. All right. And now it's part 5.
Okay, so now it's going to be part 5. There's definitely some questions here, some comments. Was she calling CPS because she knew Eva was a minor in the house alone because he was traveling all the time? No, I think she was calling CPS. All of her complaints were about him and the baby. She as far as we've heard from testimony at the hearing, she didn't care about Eva at all, or at least that wasn't her concern. When she was making these complaints against him, it was only about his relationship or violence or aggression towards the baby that she was claiming. Is it because he left Sassy on her own? No, I don't think so. I don't think that was that was why they were calling CPS. Do we know if she has a relationship with the baby now? I don't know. That one I don't know. Text a Bible verse to daughter too, so not just wife to look spiritual. I was thinking about that too. I wanted to point that out that we saw those Bible verses come up in text messages yesterday. There's a lot of discussion about how that can be used to create sort of a position of authority in a relationship, to be like, to create a sense of control, I suppose. But that's not always the case. So it seems like this was something that he did regularly, and he did that for his daughter. And she's talking about it like this is just how we would communicate with one another. Sometimes if that's something that really is a strong core of who you are, and it's a reminder of how to be a better person. And honestly, it could be that it is just that it is a daily reminder for himself to be a better person, and that he shares that with other people, that because he thinks it might be helpful for them. I mean, remember, this is a guy that punched a wall. Maybe he had anger issues, and he worked very hard to overcome those. like maybe he had a period of time. Keep in mind also, like, let's not forget, this is a guy who was married to a new woman 9 months after his wife of however many years, at least 15 years, right? Assuming that he got married before having Eva. 9 months after she died, he was remarried. I don't, grief can take all kinds of different avenues and time periods, but that is fast. That is fast to move on to a new wife. Does that mean that it's automatically unhealthy because of that period of time? No. I mean, I am sure that there are people that could come in the chat or come in the comments on this video and say, I lost my wife at a certain age, and part of my grief process was dating. And, then I found someone who I had a very strong connection with because, she had been through X, Y, and Z, and we connected through our grief, for example. There's a lot of things that that can contribute to that, but it is kind of a fast thing that maybe it's entirely possible that Doug Benefield had not processed through his grief properly before jumping into the next relationship. It could be that he jumped into the next one because he was terrified of being alone. Like there are so many reasons that could explain the speed at which he moved with that relationship. Looking at it from a grief perspective. It could also be, I see a quirky driven life. When you're in your 50s, you probably do remarry faster. Middle-age crisis, right? Or midlife crisis. It could be that. Buy a Ferrari, marry a 24-year-old. Like people kind of do some crazy things sometimes in their mid-season of their life. So, this whole Bible verse thing could be one of these things that he was using to cope with all of these things that he was dealing with. Grief from his wife, his daughter growing up, being in a new relationship, having a new baby, trying to manage all of these things all at the same time. Maybe he had some anger problems before. Maybe he didn't have anger problems before. And this was just too much for him to handle. And so it turned into him punching a wall. I do, and etc. Fill in the blank, the things that came out in the hearing. I'm not necessarily apologizing for what we've heard come out so far, but I'm trying to look at this from multiple perspectives to sort of figure out like what could be some explanations for these things. And this is very helpful to actually go through her TikToks and have her kind of tell these stories. Okay. So that is that. I'm gonna let's go to the next one. So that was what, part 4. Okay, let's go to part 5. This is so fascinating. I'm finding this to be so illuminative for this case. Okay, next one. Okay.
So so he was in Florida, he was respecting me, and like he was texting me every morning. We had a great relationship. I'd see him occasionally. I started college, and then after my freshman year of college, COVID hit. And so I decided that I was not going to go back to school for the time being because I didn't want my dad to pay for tuition when I knew I was just going to cheat on everything since everything was going to be online. So he was like, no, that's cool. And so then I was working full time, and
she's also like she's very self-honest or like brutally self-aware, saying like, I knew that if school was going to be online, I was just going to cheat on everything. That's kind of funny.
One day he didn't text me a good morning / Bible verse. Sorry, quick intermission. My friend Ava just got here. So then he hadn't sent me a Bible verse that morning or a good morning. So I freaked out a little bit because when my mom died, she didn't answer her phone either. And then I found her. So I called him, no answer. I texted him a lot, actually. Here, I'll just show you. So, like, this is what I texted my dad that morning because he didn't, answer. So, immediate gut feeling, I knew something was wrong because that was so not normal. Even though AT&T, I have AT&T and the cell towers were kind of down that day for some reason. They had been, not doing well the past few weeks. So, sometimes my phone would, shut off completely. And anyway, so then I went to my sister-in-law's house because it was really close to the job that I was going to start that day. And then my uncle called me and he was like, "Hey, Eva, we have some bad news." And I was like, "He's dead, isn't he?" And they were like, "How did you know?" And I was like, "I just had a gut feeling. Did she kill him?" And he was like, "Yeah, Ashley
Whoa.
shot and killed him." And so I
Whoa.
kind of just drove to my friend's house after that. And I sat down on his porch and all my friends were there. And I looked at them and I was like, "So Ashley killed my dad." And they were like, "Oh my God, what are we going to do with you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't have parents anymore." And then, so.
Oh my God.
That's basically it. If you have any questions, drop them down below. I am 21 now and I'm doing all right. But if you ever need life advice, I've kind of experienced a lot and I actually only had $15 in my bank account when all this happened. And I've never taken a handout from anyone. And so
Wow.
I'm now living in this super tiny, lavish studio and living through a recession. So I think I know a thing or two. But I'm doing
Damn.
okay. You should go buy Ghost Cowboy. That's the sweatshirt. All right. Bye, guys.
Damn. She's so right, though. I mean, she has been through a lot. Okay, so then this is part 6. It sounded like that was going to be the end, but yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh, you guys, yeah, I would love to have her on the channel to talk to her, but most likely that would not happen until after the trial. In fact, I wouldn't even ask to have her on before the trial because I would be so worried about something coming, some weird thing happening, being used before, I would not want to do that. That would be such a crazy conversation, but really, really good one to have her. I would 100% have her on the channel. I would love to have her on the channel to talk to her about the overall experience on everything. And wow. Yeah.
Okay, so I forgot to mention that so she shot and killed him. She said that it was out of self-defense because he was attacking her, but then forensics and the detectives discovered that there was no DNA. His DNA wasn't anywhere to be found on her, and her DNA wasn't anywhere to be found on him. So they're like, he didn't attack you, and then she pled the fifth, I think. But then her mom now has full custody of the kid. She went to jail for 17 days, but then got out on house arrest. And the trial has not started yet. The pre-trial was supposed to be last January, and then January of 2021. And then why does my phone keep doing this? January of 2021, and then that didn't happen, and it keeps getting pushed, and they haven't even started the depositions or anything. I haven't even been deposed, which is kind of fucked up if you're asking me, because I kind of just want the trial to be over because I want either her to go to jail. No, I want her to go to jail. And now there's a bunch of documentaries coming out about it, and maybe you'll see my life story on Netflix one day. Let's hope, because I actually think that it would make a great version of, y'all know the movie King of Staten Island? I think that it could be like that with a really good soundtrack because I love Kanye, but better because it's funnier. Not even funnier, even though I did write a stand-up set. I'm just rambling at this point, so there's that. But it would be like King of Staten Island, but a murder mystery. Ooh. Okay, that's it.
I'm sorry. She's funny. She is really funny. Okay, now there's one more. There's one more TikTok here. Okay. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. Okay. Oh, look at that pupper. Oh my, hang on. Brief intermission. Look at that. Look at that sleepy pupper. Oh, Indy Bear, you are such a cutie. Yeah, everyone's watching you. You don't even know. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. I think this is going to be the last TikTok, but this has been so incredibly eye-opening to see from her perspective.
Nope. I didn't get any life insurance.
So in case you guys are having trouble reading it on the screen, it says, did you at least get the life insurance, and do you have a good relationship with your little siblings? So these are some questions you guys had as well.
So when my mom died, my dad, they were like, oh, we should only just do one person. And my dad thought he was going to die first because men are idiots and they do die first. But then my mom died first and my dad was like, fuck. So he raised his life insurance in case he died. And then I guess it ended 3 months before he died and he stopped paying. He didn't renew it. So when I found those papers, I was like, this close. I was like, I was this fucking close. But then no life insurance. And so I'm here. I can proudly say that I got to where I'm at right now with lots of love from my support system, but all by myself financially. I worked my butt off. And yes, financial times, I'm still in the hard ones because I'm 21. I have no idea how to budget my money. I overspend because I love shopping. But I'm somehow paying my rent every month. And I did move 5 times last year. And now I'm here living alone because I figured I don't like having roommates. So yeah, long story short, no, I didn't get life insurance. Short story short, do you have a good relationship with your sibling? I actually haven't seen my sibling because she's in custody with the mom, the grandma, not Ashley, the grandma. And so eventually we're going to try and get custody of her. But right now, because everything is just such a legal shit show, we can't. It's just CPS sees her, the grandma, as she didn't do anything. So she's a good fit since she's blood related, even though I'm blood related. But I don't know, it's a whole thing. I'm trying to honestly just stay out of it as much as possible until the trial's over because there's just so much to unpack. If that makes sense. My dad left kind of a shitstorm behind, and now I'm dealing with it because nobody else can deal with it except for me. And I have a few family members that are being a huge help as well, but they have their own lives and so do I. So it's kind of just a really long, gruesome process to get everything over with.
No kidding.
Thank you.
Jeez. Okay. Oh my gosh. No, there's one more. Okay. This is from yesterday. Okay, so this is from yesterday. I think this is from after the hearing. Now remember, there were some photos that we saw of his autopsy. They weren't as gruesome as we were thinking that they were going to be, but still, this is her dad that she had to see in that courtroom. This is a little bit of a disclaimer that was given to me. So let's see what she has to say from her reaction after the hearing, day 1.
Hey everybody. Basically just a little update from day 1 of the hearing. It was pretty awful. I posted that little mouse moment video on lunch thinking I turned my phone off to go back into the hearing, and then I opened it back up and it was at 1 million views, which love you guys. But yeah, day 1, the state did a really good job. All of the witnesses did amazing testifying today. I did not testify. The defense attorney did not. It was just it's proving to be more and more. It's more and more evidence that Ashley is yet again lying through her teeth, as she has been this entire time. Today was pretty emotionally scarring. I definitely saw some very graphic images. I was warned beforehand that the state attorney was like, "Hey, we're about to show some images, and they might be pretty graphic if you want to step out." Or she actually said she made it up to me if I even wanted the images up on the projector, and I said yes, because if they weren't, then the media wouldn't have seen these images, and I wanted everything to be as public as possible for just so everybody knows what my dad was put through for years on end. So, yeah, I said yes. And then I thought they were going to say, what you're about to see is this image. And they just flashed it up on the projector. And that is, I'm fucked up. That got me fucked up. But, everything else was good. I did some interviews with different people, and then me and Margaret's here with me. She said, "Hey." We just finished putting everything on the website for the drop tomorrow for Ghost Cowboy. It is currently almost 1 a.m. and we have to get up. I know. We have to get up at 6 a.m. to get ready to go to the courthouse again at 7. Tomorrow is the defense attorney is bringing on witnesses. So tomorrow's just going to be basically 10 hours of hearing different people testify and shit on my dad. So I'm not looking forward to it all, but I know that I have lots of support and I love you guys and look forward to Ghost Cowboys drop tomorrow. It's 2 t-shirts, going to be fun. And I don't know, I just felt like everybody deserved an update because I posted that little mouse moment thing with no context. And yeah. This is crazy. I can't believe that it's 3 years later and the hearing's finally happening. The trial's finally here. Crazy shit.
So, okay, yes, I think that's the last one there. Yeah. Interesting to see from her perspective, because we hear about the family. We, at trial, maybe the family will testify, some members of the family will testify, but this is, she definitely comes across as very genuine, very real. As who said in the chat, not vindictive. I saw that. I think it was maybe, Draco Amy said that. Yeah, it's not vindictive. I do agree. She's definitely just like, everybody needs to see it, even if it sucks for me to see photos of my dad, in the autopsy. Everybody needs to see it because that's what happened. That is a very, very courageous thing to say and to do and to sit through. And the fact that she did is pretty remarkable. And it also kind of makes sense why the rebuttal for the state today in closing got so fiery. I could also imagine if you are also kind of giving some counseling to someone, one of the victim's families. I mean, they're usually in good contact with the family of the victim. So it's like, I would imagine they've got some fairly regular communication between them. This state attorney definitely strikes me as the type of person to act as a mama bear in this kind of a case, right? So, and especially for a girl like this, I could totally see her being a mama bear kind of figure for her, and having her sitting in the courtroom behind her, it could push her to be that much more fiery in her closing, right? Like I can totally see, like I could see myself doing that, right? Like if I'm the state, if I'm the prosecution, and I've got this girl sitting in the courtroom behind me, and I'm prosecuting the case for the state, on behalf of her dad's the victim. Like I could totally see myself getting very inflamed and just letting all hell break loose and be like, the other side is like, they're a bunch of assholes and they don't know anything and they are lying through their teeth. Like I could totally see that. Happening. So anyway, okay. I think that for me about does it. This has been great. I love having the discussion with the chat. You guys have been really, really lovely through this whole process. And now that Indy's left, I guess I'll take her off screen. But it's been, really great seeing the discussion in the chat. I mean, it definitely is still from the discussion. It's a very, very gray area. We're all kind of looking at this from multiple perspectives, which tells me it's probably going to go to trial. I think it really needs to. So, all right. Thank you guys. And thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you to everybody that gifted memberships today. That was so fun. Thank you guys. That was very generous of all of you for gifting memberships. And thank you as always to the mods for helping to usher the conversation in a way that is productive and helpful for everybody and is still warm and welcoming for everybody to voice their differing opinions. That's one of the things that really provides for a great, robust chat, which I love. So, okay. That'll about do it for me. Monday is Menendez Monday. So if you guys are following the Menendez trial, classic trials, join us on Monday at 10 a.m. East Coast time. Otherwise, tomorrow on Hogue Law, Rick Hogue's channel, we've got a Lawyers and Dragons side quest. I think we're going to be playing some different characters. Ian Runkle will be our dungeon master, since the great David from Prototopics will be out. So if you guys are part of the Lawyers and Dragons crew, or you're interested in seeing what that's about, you don't need to know the narrative for that one. If you're just dropping in, it's going to be a whole new story. So everybody's going to be starting fresh from the beginning on that one. So check it out for that. I think also 10 a.m. East Coast time. Otherwise, Menendez Monday, and I'm working on another deep dive as a little bit of a follow up to the Ocean Gate video. So if you guys enjoyed that, it's going to be, I polled about it. The results were really good. So yeah, it's going to be on the Titanic lawsuits. So that is going to be really interesting too. I'm working on that. I'm going to try to get that out as soon as possible. So with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.